Alrighty, my time at Deer Park Monastery in Escondido, California. Um, should have made this video right after I got back, but here we are. And surprisingly, I think before I went down, I was looking for accounts, and there's a few online that are pretty detailed, but I don't think I found very many on YouTube. And especially, I don't think many recounting the 90 days retreat. So I went down in fall of 2021 for the 90 days, exploring the monastic path. And it was kind of a funny one too, because it's sort of a dual entry thing, because they have lay people there that are just for the retreat, and they don't have any interest. In fact, most people that are there, they have no interest in the monastic path. Out of about the 30 lay people that were there, maybe 10 or 12 total, including a couple females, were interested. This is also the first time they opened from the pandemic, because in 2020 they couldn't do it. So that was also kind of interesting, auspicious time to be there, and there was quite a few lay people. But yeah, the schedule. You get up 5-ish, 5:30-ish. Usually they're sitting in the morning in the big hall, 5:45 or so. Except on lazy days, which on lazy days I think they don't even have it. Yeah, it's basically just like an open day, which is every Monday. So it's kind of nice. It's just built in. And I think most monasteries, it's not really a thing, as far as I know. They usually don't have a day off, but lazy day. And then after the sitting, there's breakfast. And so oftentimes the breakfast crew will not be sitting because they can't do both. So whoever's cooking that day, and when you cook all day as you're part of your crew, which usually includes monastics and lay people. And then breakfast, and then there was a work period. And then there was walking meditation. And then there was lunch around noon-ish or so. And then after lunch there might be workshop stuff, from lay Dharma teachers. Or Dharma sharing groups with monastics and lay teachers. And then we'd walk to the gate sometimes too, which is a pretty good walk. Sometimes, yeah, there also was afternoon sitting, 4-ish or so. And what I like about the tradition is it's not super intensive with the sitting, because I just posturally wise, I can't even get in the half lotus very easily anymore, which is interesting. If I'm going back to explore the monastic path for a second time, I'm going to have to get my body back in shape for that. But I started initially when I was there in half lotus, but I just my knees and stuff goes too dead too quick. So it's uncomfortable, but it is a nice posture though. I prefer that over sitting in a chair, because a chair is just a little weird, and you don't have your chakra points aligned, and I don't know. It's just a nice, because from all my days of actual half lotus meditation, you really feel it different. You feel this different grounding, centering energy when you can get into that. But anyway. And then there's dinner, which a lot of monastics wouldn't go to. They're almost almost old school style, where it's don't eat after noon. But most would. Only a select few would skip, or it was kind of hit and miss. Generally, all lay people would, because you're used to that schedule. Some people that were fasting, they do a nothing afternoon thing. Kind of a nice observance. And then after that, sometimes after dinner, there'd be like maybe a Dharma Talks class from Tai Fat Blue, Brother Stream, on the 40 Tenets of Plum Village, which I think he finally finished that series, and it's pretty daunting, but that would be something to tackle maybe before I return. And and then yeah, there's also, I think, in the afternoon too. There's another work period somewhere in there. Probably. Oh, what's also cool about after lunch, there's like a built-in nap rest period for like an hour or so, over an hour. So that's kind of nice because they're pretty long days when you get up so early, and lights out is like 9 or 10 o'clock, and you really have to be diligent about it because if you stay up past 11, which I did a few times, you feel it. You can maybe stay up past 11 on like Sunday night before the lazy day, and then you can sleep in and even like miss breakfast, and sleep in. But I would not advise. uh, and since in Portland, I had so much free time generally with my schedule that was a bit abrasive when I came to this very regimented thing. But it grows on you, and it's kind of nice because like you don't have to like chart your course every day. Like, where am I gonna go? Am I gonna go on a road trip even? Am I gonna go visit someone? Am I gonna go? It's just like you can't even leave for the 90 days. You're locked in, kind of, and you're committed to that. Only leaving for like medical emergencies and things. Like some of us left to get a booster shot, and some other people left for medical dental things, and which is kind of interesting too because like I haven't been there outside of the rains retreat, and then outside of the rains retreat, there's a lot more little day trips and things to the beach and to parks and stuff, and so there's a lot more like because you can leave, so that's a different flavor. Weather-wise too, it's amazing in the winter because it was like 80 degrees on Thanksgiving, and it only rained like 5 or 6 times since I was down there. And coming from Oregon, where it's like crazy wet, soggy, gross all the time, it was really nice being down there. And in the summer it can get pretty hot, but like still it's close enough to San Diego that it's sort of, I think, keeps it a little bit in line, so it doesn't get crazy. But that was definitely one of the perks. I was like, wow, yeah, like I would like to get out of the Oregon winters. And I had I've been in 40 Oregon winters and I only missed one. So like that was it, and that was really nice. Um, so it's a pretty nice situation down there. Yeah, 400 acres. They play lots of games there too. They play soccer and a lot of volleyball. And there's a little bit of basketball. We got a little bit of basketball here and there, but it's kind of actually we didn't play for like a whole month towards the end for some reason. Maybe it was a little too intense. You can throw the football around, little things. Because that's one of the four elements of the Plum Village tradition, which is another thing that's like a modernization of it. It's like, what is it? Work. Crap, I can't remember off the top of my head. Work, the Dharma, maybe. Whatever you call it, practice. Play, and then there's another one. I can't remember. But play is one of the four elements, which is kind of cool. Because it's very modernized from what I can tell. I haven't been directly to a lot of different Buddhist monasteries, but just from what I've gleaned over the years and heard from other people, like the lack of intense sitting is part of that, and he spreads it around into more mindfulness as opposed to just sit and have a breakthrough or something. So, and like I enjoy that. Like it's spread around into walking. It's spread around into just being present. They have the bell that goes off all the time, so you can come back to yourself. When you're doing chores and things and cooking, like it's a generally mindful atmosphere, even though you can talk and stuff. And there's a library, which is cool. You can check out books, which I kind of got in hot water for actually. Not big hot water, but I didn't realize that you were supposed to only check out Dharma books, and I was checking out, like, they would call them complementary knowledge, and it's because it's mostly for the monastics. This library, so it has like mostly Dharma books in there, but then there's like complementary knowledge, so like, history, science, psychology, that kind of thing. It's like what will help you become a well-rounded monk and to be able to serve people. So that's kind of cool. But I think I found a couple of random, like a Sebastian Junger book about tribal relationships, which is actually, pretty interesting. But like, they were telling the lay people just stick to the Dharma books. But I felt like I'm already Dharma'd out, like I'm getting it 24/7. um, what else? And then there'll be special people would come every like Friday, every week or two, and stay for a week or two. Different folks would come in during the retreat. Um, and then there were also folks that would come for like the winter retreat towards the New Year and Christmas time. Christmas time was fun too. We had like a big old celebration. And yeah, substance free, wholesome, you know. Um, and it's just amazing, even like the lack of cussing and stuff, right? It's like the monks aren't like cussing every other word like most people out in Babylon. So even those subtle things are nice. We did watch Dune, which was funny. We watched Dune because it came out, and my buddy and I too were kind of like campaigning to watch it because we're like, oh my god, like we're gonna miss it because it's gonna come and go in the theaters. So we had like a special exception where we had Dune, but generally there's not a lot of screen time. You can even give them your phone, and they'll take your phone and keep it the whole time if you want them to. The cell phone reception's not so great, but it was enough. And this was one of my failures when I was there. And part of the reason too, I mean, I figured out I wasn't going to become a monastic after about a month, which was also premature. And that's like a whole other discussion. But so part of like the last month and a half, 2 months there was sort of, I think another thing is as diligent about like guarding the sense gates and stuff. And so I was just like watching stuff on my phone and in the little down moments and stuff when I was resting in my hammock at my campsite, like, Curb Your Enthusiasm, like the latest season, and Succession, which is dumb. It's just like such an unwholesome show, and then YouTube videos and things. But I think in hindsight, I would have been better off giving them my phone. But I was kind of worried because I wasn't sure if I was going to stay, and so if I had given them my phone, I guess I could have requested it back at that point. But like finding another place to be at as a kind of houseless guy who doesn't have a vehicle was a little weird. And that's actually why I ended up coming back to my father's house in Portland, because I was like, I'm not really sure where to go from here, because I didn't really know anybody in the area. Um, at least maybe not to host me for a while. And in some ways it's another regret because there was a group of folks that left after the rains. They were kind of like road tripping a little bit as a little like post rains adventure. But what was interesting is how if I would have gone with them, that most of those people came back because Thich Nhat Hanh passed away like 4 days after we left. It was kind of nuts, the timing of it. And it's too bad actually that because I probably wouldn't have left if he would have passed away before it had ended, because then they would have been like that kind of open, extension of like staying and plugging in and everything. But it is what it is, and I missed out on some of that stuff and further bonding and plugging in. But it is a little tricky because like it's not quite like if your friends are living in an intentional community or like a shared house, you can just like call them up, right? Be like, hey, da 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 da, catch up, whatever. Hey, can I come and crash at your place? It's not quite like that. There's a lot more kind of opaqueness or barriers, because it's sort of like what it is it's like a mindfulness university, right? Or like a school in a way, a temple, a monastery. And so like a lot of the monastics are, especially the Dharma teachers, they're like college professors. And so like just like college professors, they're not the most accessible because they're busy. And they have a long list and lots of emails and all kinds of stuff to sort through. So it's kind of interesting where, yeah, it's just different. And even the separation between, like, there's the monks and then there's the lay people. And even that's a little strange at times because you're like, there's just like a little bit of a barrier. And there's like reasons for that. I think there's like, it makes sense because like they've chosen a different path and there's different things that protect them too, and they need their space and they need their time to decompress and like everything else. But it is kind of an interesting hybrid of things because like you're practicing and embedded with the monastics, and the monastics are like running the show as like retreat center host people and setting the tone, along with the other lay people that are plugging in there, like the lay staff too. So that was kind of interesting and different than like you would expect from like intentional communities. You'll have like leaders, but you're all kind of there as just like people. There's not a separate group of folks that are also there. They're following different rules and tenets, and vows. So it is. And then sometimes what was interesting too is like some folks would show up there and there was almost like this celebrity culture around the monks, or like kind of like they were in awe of the monks. And there's actually, I mean, there's a legitimate reason for that, because like what these folks are committing to is worthy of that kind of respect. But sometimes it's like a little like exotic, or like, or there's like exoticness with like the Eastern mysticism of the monastic stuff and everything. So I mean you'll find that in most every religion, no matter what. People will always kind of be like that to the like most dedicated religious types, priests, and look how the popes treated. And similarly with that, with Thich Nhat Hanh, like sometimes I felt like there's so much adoration for the man that it kind of struck me as a little strange at times. And I think part of that is I never met him, and I think I would have changed my tune if I would have been around him and be like, yeah, this guy's legit. Just like the Dalai Lama gets so much reverence. It's like this guy was an awakened teacher master for many, many decades. So it's like he deserves all of it. Part of that's also your own ego, especially as someone who's like this dropout, simple living dude who like kind of like is like a 25% monastic or something. there's some shade of that where it's like I've borrowed a lot and taken a lot and modeled a lot of my life after a lot of monastics and monkish habits, but I'm still not 100%. And so that blurred line kind of makes your ego inflate a little bit, because you think, oh yeah, I'm just like on a similar trajectory as you guys, but it's like, well, you're doing wholesome simplicity service stuff, but there's also a lot of people that live like you. They're simple living people that live in vans and closets and volunteer and live on the land and travel and live out of their backpack. Like that's more of what you're doing. And this is like at the 2 years since I've been away, this has been a lot of the process of like humbling myself and realizing where I'm really at. Which then, when you humble yourself more like that, you start seeing how Thich Nhat Hanh and the monastics actually like are on another level of commitment. Even though they put on their robe one leg at a time, so to speak, and they have their own foibles and whatever. And a lot of them really will kind of lead with that too, like Tai Phap Young, who's the abbot there for many years and is one of the big Dharma teachers. He's very jovial and down to earth, and most of them are like that too. They're like I have special powers, I can levitate and all this kind of nonsense. They're just like they're focused on helping and They give themselves over to the Sangha. And that's the beauty too of like when you give yourself over to the Sangha body, you flow as a river, as they would say. And so it's not like all on you to like navigate everything or to like, because that's what's crazy in our world. There's so much like entrepreneurial, independent, make your own way stuff. It's really drives me nuts. And this is part of the reason why I failed in like my own way of doing that, because I'm not meant to do that really. I'm just meant to be another person in a community plugging in, and not to be like this big, I'm going to get my Wikipedia page and I'm going to get a bunch of followers on social media and like this personal notoriety. You can gain notoriety within the Sangha. Like some of these Dharma teachers, they get kind of known because they're kind of become more of the face. And then they have to, be mindful of their own hubris and that. And they write books and things, But, and I remember that was part of my challenge too, is like I felt like if I joined, it would kind of swallow up everything that I've done so far and kind of erase it or something. Because like even claiming like, I've lived X amount of years primarily moneyless would kind of go away. But like, where has that gotten me? It's like, it's a cool flex for simplicity and like in living in like a service-based life, but it's not really sustainable outside of monastic paths where you can really give up your personal bank account safely. And that's the other thing too. It's like you give that up, it goes a long way because you give it up, and then you're collectively held within the finances of the Sangha. And there's 800 monastics worldwide in like 9 centers. So there's like a lot of stability there and resources coming in from wealthy donors and professional people that are, lawyers and doctors and teachers and professors and whatever that have enough money that they can go to retreats and they can donate and do. So it's like, and I felt kind of weird because it felt a little bougie at times almost, but it's like, it's not a bad thing to have resources. And that's part of my like simplicity bias where it's like, you can still live simply like these guys do in community, but they're like, they're comfortable enough. Like they have plenty of food, they have resources, they have technology, they have, a lot of people are coming in there. They're famous. They're like luminaries in terms of in the Buddhist community. Like I said, besides like the Dalai Lama traditions and stuff, they're like way up there. So, it's like you're lucky to have the opportunity to even entertain the chance of becoming a monastic, in my opinion, given the alternatives, because the alternative is some kind of intentional community thing. If you're talking about like the wholesome simplicity spectrum, or some other order, you're going to join some other order. But the thing is too, like in my case, I'm aging out of a lot of these orders, and Deer Park's cutoff is 50. So it's I still got some time. But yeah, what else about my experience there? Might be it really. That's kind of the main points. The paywall stuff's a little funky. I've talked about that, where it can be fairly expensive. It's like $6,000 to camp there for 90 days. That covers everything, but like still, like to me, that's like a good chunk of money that most people can't just throw out on like a temporary thing. Even you're only going to be there for 90 days. It's not like you're like renting some place, like a down payment or something, first and last month apartment or something like that. And how I roll too, it's like, because I kept trying to figure out, I was like, how can I get like food stamps and like use that to offset my price there or something? Because in Portland, I didn't spend money on food. I would dumpster dive, I would share food, I would get food stamps, and like I spent like hardly anything, almost nothing, and I didn't go out to eat. So like most of that money that you're paying is for the food, which I think is about probably $10 a meal now, Because when I was there, it was like 8. Maybe it's even gone up to $12 a meal for all I know. That's what they figured out. And then there's all the other overhead. They got to pay for the monastics insurance, and they got to pay for the vehicle stuff, and insurance and gas and maintenance, and they got to pay for some of the staff because they have like minimal staff. As far as I know, they got to pay for utilities and some other miscellaneous things. Because I don't think they're like price tagging the Dharma, as far as I know. I don't think that's included. Because I think that actually kind of goes against the Buddha's original teachings too, if you're putting a price tag on the teachings. So they're just sort of covering the overhead, and maybe enough of a gap in there too that like they don't cut it too tight. Because it's a big operation, you know. It's a big operation. It's not like some little thing. Like the bigger an operation, the bigger the price tag. Usually, the bigger the paywall, and it's softened to some degree because there's like scholarships and there's reductions. You can do work trade and stuff. Like right now, they have you can go down there and help build the residence for like several months, and just do work trade, which is probably what I'll do, and then I'll roll into the next range retreat, perhaps. But yeah, you know, it's a pretty good spot, and it's like, it's pretty legit. It's like there's no skeletons in the closet as far as I can tell. You know? It's like there's no scandalous stuff going on, which is one reason why people are drawn there. It's like, oh my God, are you telling me there's actually like wholesome people out there, and they're not bankrupt morally, and you know, a whole bunch of whatever stuff going on? Because that's there's so much of that in our modern world that it's hard to believe that there's actually people that are really dedicated to living mindfully and wholesome. And yeah, and even like, I guess I'll talk about briefly the celibacy angle too is really interesting because like, you know, even when you're there as a layperson, like you're not off limits. Like, you know, if you're there with your partner and you're in like a tent situation or something, or although sometimes they will have the different genders, the different there's like the nuns and there's the monks residences, and they'll have you at different places. But celibacy just makes things a lot smoother, you know. Sure, you're not gonna have maybe your explosions of passionate romantic stuff, but like in a monastic setting, that's really dangerous and it's unsustainable. You can't have the monastics having romantic entanglements. And even back in the day, in the Buddhist time, like you can't have babies and things in a monastic setting. It doesn't work. So like you can't have families. So you give yourself fully in terms of everyone. You're on like equal. You're friends to everybody, and you're brothers and sisters together. And you're not getting, you know, embroiled in all this drama and like the really strong emotions of jealousy and rage and envy and like, you know, why aren't they talking to me, and you know, all that like really thorny stuff that comes up in romantic relationships. And most of us aren't skilled enough to navigate that. So it's a nice container to be in, like where you're just not around that, because most communities are full of people that are in romantic strife and turmoil, or they just broke up and they're wounded, or they've come out of abusive relationships, they're in one and you're seeing it because you know, because like you're there and there's people that are very unskillful and they have a lot of wounds. And that's further thing too, because like when you're there with the monks, like they're holding down that line of mindfulness, and they're beholden to the vows, and there's like this container that keeps you nourished and supported, as opposed to, you know, some of these other communities where it could be all over the place, you know, and all the substances, once, like I said, intermixed into the flow. It's kind of chaotic, you know. And so there's something to be said. The older you get to, the more I find that you value stability and peacefulness, and you know, you just don't want to mess around anymore, because you're just kind of beaten down by all the years of of failures and heartache and messiness of people, and you just want to be in somewhere that's not so messy.